Hello, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Next Chapter podcast. I'm Angela Raspis, and I am delighted to introduce you today to the lovely Anita McLachlan, the owner of Sequins and Sand, an online store which helps you get ready, holiday ready for summer with some gorgeous swimwear and other things as well. Now, I was hugely excited when I found Anita online in one of those wonderful online networking groups via Facebook, because what I found was a connection statement, something that we've learned to how to describe our business to those who we want to attract towards us. And the photo and the statement that Anita had, which I'll tell you about shortly and show you in the show notes, just grabbed my heart. It was so full of joy and delight and empathy. I knew we were kindred spirits. And then when we were chatting just before I hit record, she said, let's make this a truth-telling call. Like, let's actually, when we're talking about business and what it's all about and the ups and downs and the ins and outs, let's tell it how it really is. And so she had me at hello. Anita, thank you so much for being here today.
Hi, Angela. How are you? Thank you for having me. I'm over the moon about this chat. It's great.
Awesome. You're most welcome. And like I said, when you see people online who are working or wholeheartedly is the way that I like to describe it, then I know that we need to spread the conversation. So when I bring people onto the podcast, I love to find out about their backstories, because the chapter that we're in today is obviously not the one we were in 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I know you're running a very, very positive and successful business now, but I also know you've had some interesting twists and turns and have delved into a few different stories in the past. So could you give us some insight? Who is Anita? Where have you been? What have you been doing?
Okay. Well, going right back, I'm actually a radiographer by trade. That's what I did when I left school. Got a bit bored with that, didn't yank my chain. Then I got into project management and loved that.
Yeah.
And I think those skills actually put me in good stead for then running my own business. So I've been married to the military, beautiful boy, for nearly 30 years now. And during that time, we have had probably, I think I counted 13 moves.
Wow.
We lead a nomadic lifestyle. Yeah. So once the kids came along, my career tempo in corporate, we kind of switched. Army got busy, we went to Timor and all of that happened. So the pace picked up military wise, and then good timing, I said, right, we're having our babies. And then I chose to pull back career wise and focus on the children. And then when the kids were a little bit older, I just had 2, but when my baby girl was about 4, I thought now's probably a good time to test to do something for me. So I teamed up with a friend at the time who was also in the same sort of life space and stage. And we said, let's give this resort wear and swimwear thing a crack. And we just kind of dove in. And we thought, we'll test the waters for 12 months. And
no pun intended.
True. And then we thought, well, if it has legs, then we'll continue on. So we continued on, and that was probably 10 years ago now, but if you look at the testing then pre-launch, so that's the career. So 10 years on, and I'm still hanging in there.
Still swimming. No, I love how you mentioned there that you and the friend, you're at similar stages of life, and you looked for an opportunity and you went, let's give it a crack. Let's dive in. I think that's an incredibly admirable trait, because a lot of us quite naturally have fear around taking that sort of leap, jumping into the unknown, trying something completely new and different. So how was that feeling at the time? Was there any fear nibbling around the edges, or was there really that sheer confidence of, bugger it, let's give it a go?
I think there was so much excitement around just learning new stuff. And I guess that's a reflection of my personality. I've always been a bit like that, and Pip was the same. And I think we both managed our risk quite well at the beginning, in that we said, right, let's agree what sum of money we're both prepared to put into it, and that's it. So we've got to make it work with that. And I think that sort of was enough risk management for both of us at the time. And then the rest was weaving in the possibilities and creating our vision together beyond that. Yeah.
That's a great idea, to actually hold on to, or to limit the amount of investment to make, so that that could then temper the natural fear or concern when you're trying something new.
Yeah.
That's a really great way of approaching it. And why resort wear? Why did this particular area? And because you're not just resort wear, you're certainly taking care of us women who, and this is where I'm going to bring in the wonderful connection statement, which I should show if you're watching the video, but it'll also be on the show notes on the page. So your swimsuit stylist, we help women whose body shapes have changed over the years to get back into a swimsuit with more confidence, feeling supported with our thoughtfully designed swimwear and fitting advice. Now, was that always the view? Was that always the perspective when you started, or did you morph into that?
Morphed into it.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, and then it was like a whole newfound love affair with my business, to be honest, which has propelled me for probably the last 4 years, more so than anything. When I first started, Pip and I were having a coffee, and we were getting ready for our summer break, December here in Australia. Mm-hmm. And she'd come over from England, and she just said to me, "I can't believe women here go to the beach with a towel wrapped around them." She was horrified. And she said, "There's these things in Europe called caftans, mm-hmm. and let's do that." I said, "Okay, let's do that." So we then scoured around trying to find these caftans, and we couldn't. But I think Camilla had just kind of launched, so we're going right back now, pre-Camilla, days. It's almost BC before Camilla, And then we thought, well, what else do we need? So here were these two women. We were in our late 30s, and we knew we were beyond the skimp of the surf shops. And we, at the time then, the chain stores and the department stores had a lot of frump. There wasn't, with all due respect, I hope nobody out there is in work still. But
Opinions are fine. Opinions are fine.
We just didn't feel that it was, groovy and stylish enough for us. We sort of felt like we fell through the cracks. So we decided to change that and do something about it. And so the logo, or the tag for Sequins and Sand, which I should probably use more consistently than I do, is also no skimp, no frump. And we sell sizes 10 to 30 now with the swimwear as well. So that's how it started, was out of frustration really of not really finding anything for our age group that we thought we could feel great in and still look the part. And then over time, Pip went back to the UK. It was just me, and I'd probably, 3-4 moves around Australia down the track. And business was like this, right? So every year was different. And I went through really good growth, and then plateaued, and then SEO changed, and I went through the floor a bit, and I had to pick up again. It was like this flight path like this. And then I started to have these conversations more and more, and something just clicked. Women were in tears on the phone to me. Women through email were telling me these stories that just made my heart break and ache. That, not being able to find any swimsuit that made them feel good, that let them live a full and joyous summer. They were trapped. And the more I listened, the more it seemed to come to me, and these stories just kept multiplying. And so I became a lot more tuned into that, because personally, I'll be honest, I have never struggled with that. Where I grew up and with my family, we never even had body confidence discussions. It just never came up in conversation. So I'm one of these people that kind of goes through life blissfully unaware in lots of ways. And so it opened up my eyes to all that. And the more I listened, the more I knew this was where I wanted to be and who I wanted to help. So
I love that point, Anita. I want to bring out the fact that I really believe that empathy is such an important part of building next chapter businesses, but that's with an asterisk beside it. You don't have to have actually experienced the thing to be able to hear the concern, to feel empathy, and can I even go so far as to say compassion for someone's situation, for someone's problem, and recognize that you can provide a solution for that. But it starts with listening. And I think that's the most important thing there, is that you heard and you responded to what you were hearing from your audience, that they weren't happy, and that you could find a way to increase their joy. And that's the part that I really admire about how you've wrapped your business around this body confidence issue. Because goodness knows, having just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago, them body parts aren't in the same place as they were.
No.
I often say, and it's reality. I often say that, you know, my own boobs have got fear of heights now. They never used to.
Well,
So,
yours and mine.
so I'm not alone. So that sounds, and looking at your website and your Facebook page, it looks as though that then opened up a whole new era for you. And in terms of this concept of cozy confidence, and cozy, for anyone listening who is not Australian, that is a swimsuit. And I'm a Kiwi by birth, so I call them togs. I don't know. There's lots and lots of different expressions. But talk to us about the fuel and the passion that came behind this cozy confidence drive for you.
Yeah. Well, it was an idea I had probably 3 to 4 years now. And I remember sitting down and writing a plan and going, right, this is how I'm going to do this. It's got to be separate to Sequins and Sand, because I don't want to be seen to be hijacking women's raw emotion for commercial gain. And that was my personal struggle when I first launched. So I had this notion it'll just be a social media campaign. I'll get some influencers on board. I really wanted to get Taryn Brumfitt, you know, from Body Image Movement.
Yeah.
You know Taryn?
Yeah, it was a great movie.
Extraordinary movement, and amazing Australian. And I, you know, she was on my radar from day one. I thought if I could do something with Taryn, that would propel this. We have you know, I'm sort of like a subset of what she's on about, because my niche is doing it in swimwear. So I wrote it all down, and to be honest, it didn't really fire. I thought, build it and they would come. Stupidly, you think after having a website for like 6 years, I'd know that wasn't the case. But anyway, we dream. And so then I started to refine it. I put it to the back burner a bit, started to refine it. And then the next year I thought, right, I'm going to create a campaign. Through speaking with other women, this is what they'd done. So on social media, I put a call out. This is what we're trying to do. This is what you get. This is what you give. A bit of a contract, a loose contract, if you like. And this is what we're trying to achieve. This is about the movement. Come on board. The response was great.
How did you describe that? Excuse me, when you were reaching out, what were you trying to achieve? What were you trying to create?
I was trying to create getting the message out that no matter what your perceived body image is of yourself, live your best summers. Get in the photos. Don't sit on the sidelines. Make those memories. And that's the consequence of not feeling confident in a swimsuit, because like it or not, you know, summers are hot. Summers involve beaches and pools and all sorts of things like that, where we need to be in a swimsuit to really participate. And it's that non-participation where women miss out, and so do their loved ones, really, you know, their children and their partners and their relatives and friends. So that was the message, the encouragement that this is possible, that you can do it. And I wanted sort of like these ambassadors, I guess, if you like. I call them now my Cozy Confidence crew members. And the crew are these wonderful women who are passionate about that message, who want to spread the word on social media and beyond. So we did that, got a good response. And we did a campaign, you know, that whole saying, from little things, big things grow. Yeah, that was very much the case. So we did a campaign here in Brisbane Bayside, and I remember using the hashtag not Noosa because it was bare bones stuff. But I got some beautiful bloggers here in Brisbane and some other women who I knew were passionate about it. It was a group of about 8 of us. And we had a day photographing, filming, video. Video to me is more powerful than anything else. And they told their stories. We took some images of them in their swimsuit and we created some messages. And that was really good. And from a creating a movement point of view, it gave me a basis, because we created this great content. And once you start to create that great content, then things start to build. You've got something to show people. Whereas before then, it was all words and a lot of talk, really, and images that weren't mine, that weren't ours. So I've learned that that's really important. You have to create this stuff and put it out there, and then give people a chance to respond. So last year, I did it differently again. I have been learning a different way to market through her business, and you know, the beautiful Susie. And I put some of that practice into making it more of a selection process to be part of this movement, because it was really important to me that the women who were involved got the message and were passionate about the message. So they had to work for it. They had to put in a video submission and say why they wanted to be part of this. It was like a filtering. And I wanted to have a woman from every state and territory represented in the crew. And we got a good response. And we then chose, I wanted to take it next level, bit the bullet and hired this amazing house in Kingscliff in northern New South Wales. And I'd also learned that to pull off a good shoot, you need good lighting. And so this house had great natural lighting, and I knew whether it was raining outside or whether the sun was out, we'd get some good shots. So we did that, and the girls were so passionate. They actually contributed to the cost of that themselves, which just blew me away. Like, I never asked for it, and it was just forthcoming. So the whole thing came together. And the video you saw, Angela, that you mentioned earlier, that was crafted from last year's campaign, where they told their stories. And a bit like this conversation, it's not preconceived in any way other than we're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. And the girls just spoke and nothing was edited out. It just happened. And it was raw and real, which is like how I like to roll.
And that just confirms for you utterly that you have tapped into like a movement, or you have tapped into a sentiment that already exists. Like you haven't, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way to anyone who's creating movements, but I think they're most powerful when you tap into a strong sentiment and feeling that's already there, and you create a way of it being expressed. Because those women are all feeling this. We're all feeling, when I say we all, a lot of us are feeling this frustration, and we break through it, I think, at a certain age. Like now, bugger you, I'm going down to the beach in Matogs anyway. But to tap into and allow and provide a way of expressing a feeling, and to bring other people together. So you've got that kindred spirit of, oh my God, I'm not alone. Yes, I feel like that too. That is where the most powerful movements are born, I believe, when people recognize the truth and the opportunity that you've made available, and they hear that same expression of truth come from other people around them as well. So congratulations, that's a biggie.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was just a whole lot of fun. Like that's the other beauty
that
of
helps.
it. Yeah, it wasn't try hard, or it just, I don't know, it just came together beautifully. It was lovely.
And so you said that this is separate to Sequins and Sand, but there's no doubt they hold hands. Have they started to come closer together now?
Yeah, they have.
Yep.
And I mean, that was a block for me, like I said initially. And then over time, and having other conversations with other business women in particular, the word was, you're crazy, woman. You Sequins and Sand is the commercial aspect, and that funds Cosy Confidence. That's the harsh reality, So they do need to support each other. And I think so far the common bridge is the content. So I've used a lot of the content from the Cosy Confidence day, it was shoot over that weekend, and have woven that into, product imagery for Sequins and Sand. And some blog posts, but more, and I know I can do that better. I haven't really done a huge job, but I think that's where the crossover's been so far. And now the challenge for me is what to do with that next. And that's my next hurdle. And that's what I've got to learn to jump over in the next 6 months.
Sounds like your next chapter. Couldn't help that. But interesting, the point that you just made there is that, Sequins and Sands funds quasi confidence. And that's important to recognize, that it is okay to invest over here so that you can make this thing happen over here.
Mm.
And I think what I've seen, and I've done so many interviews and worked with so many women over the years, is that we sometimes are almost apologetic that we are making money over here, and that for us to be able to create the thing that we want over here. And no apologies, we absolutely deserve to be well compensated for the work that we do in the world. I know that especially in service-based businesses where you have a natural skill, like a lot of health practitioners and wellness practitioners feel almost guilty sometimes for charging for what they see as a natural gift. And some of that hangover comes into what I've seen into women's businesses sometimes, because we are the caring ones. There is that narrative that goes along with what it means to be a woman. And I think there's absolutely no problems with us utilizing our gifts and being well paid. And then taking that and doing some of that charity work. It's not exactly a charity, but it's, understand what I'm saying in terms of that gift type work. But we need to take care of ourselves financially first, so that we have the energy and the means to then create these other movements and things that are happening. So putting them together and allowing them to hold hands makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Not that you need permission. That's just an observation on my behalf.
Well, you're absolutely right. But, it took me 2 years, 3 years to come to that realization. Like, that didn't happen overnight. And I still feel a bit guilty, and I'm still conscious of it, but I'm learning, to put it to a side and go, no, this is the reason why, and that's a solid reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think appreciation there, recognizing, I often talk, if you're in my world, you understand one of the things that I encourage all my clients to have is a fabulous file. So a fabulous file is where you have evidence of your fabulosity, so that when you're having doubt or concerns, or that hurdle seems too big in front of you, you go and roll around in your fabulous file for a while, which is where you've kept all your great feedback, your achievements, goals that you've got, and things like that. And some of that feedback from the women who've been involved in your movement should definitely be in your fabulous file, so that when that next 6-month hurdle is coming up, go and just revel in that for a while and recognize that you gave those women voice. And that in turn has an enormous ripple effect on other women that may not be brave enough or courageous enough to feature in your campaigns and in your videos, but they're feeling it. They're absolutely feeling it. So never underestimate the ripple effect that you have. And in fact, so many women who are creating businesses, we have invisible impact so often that we're not aware of. And I think it's really important for us to pause and savor that for a moment, that we're making change. So it's important work, really important work that you're doing.
Thank you. And you're so right. I've never really, I was doing a lot of stuff and I never told many people about it. And it's sort of like, since doing this Quasi Confidence campaign, I guess it's actually helped me to do that as well, to put it out there. And then, you seeing what I did just was another example of that. And Susie putting it out there to facilitate that too. It's like, oh my goodness, this is how it works. You actually put it out there and people take it in, because I get some beautiful responses on email and thank yous, and it's lovely. But it's also nice to be appreciated in this way with your peers as well. You create all this stuff and you really don't know whether it's hitting the mark or not, because not everybody gives you feedback.
But isn't it important there how you felt it strongly that you wanted to do this thing? So what would, if there's another woman listening, and I know there is, who's like on that cusp and going, can I put my stuff out there? Can I do this thing? Does my idea have merit? What would you say to her?
I would say, listen to your heart and do what you feel is right, because I believe that our instincts are very strong and that it will be the right thing to do, and give it time. Like I thought, create this, get it out there, boom, we'd be hitting our straps, we'd be down that straight and people would go, yeah, this is great. But it takes time. And now when I'm creating this stuff, I don't expect an instant, conversion, if you like, for want of a crude term. It will take time. Because as you say, depending on what it is that you're creating and the message behind it, it might be something that people take a while to digest, and it's about building that trust with the awareness as well.
Yeah.
Because when you're talking about something raw and emotional in particular, it's that trust factor, and that doesn't happen overnight.
No, not at all. And even if you, excuse me, have a business concept, a business idea that isn't quite so raw, isn't quite so personal. So I often say that next chapters are built on skinned knees, often built on skinned knees. So it's our lived experience that we can now curate and transform into a business, a service offering, because we can shorten and sweeten the journey for others. But that doesn't mean that you have to have gone through some sort of terrible experience and, and learned from the heartache. It's not always that. It could be literally that you've learned how to use social media better. It could be something very simple, but that same message applies. It takes time. And I think it's one of the dangers of us being immersed in social media is that all we tend to see is the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's these assumptions. We press our nose up against the glass looking at other people's businesses and going, oh, they're going so well. They're going so brilliantly. And sometimes we do, as you said yourself, up and down and up and down. But, it takes time to build. So what have you found perhaps as some of the approaches that you've had to business that have kept you going maybe from a strategic side, maybe from an encouragement side from people around you? Do you have a bit of a team that keeps you going? How do you operate in the world to continue your business?
Well, because we had that nomadic lifestyle, it's only really just going to be stopping this year. So we've only just, that'll change again. But my team's always been virtual around me. So I've often run my business pretty much on my own. I might have had 2 or 3 others helping me operationally with orders, or getting orders out and that sort of thing. But then as I've moved, a lot have stayed with me. So Duncan, who helped create the website first up 10 years ago, is still part of my team. And, I love and adore him and trust him. So he's based in the Blue Mountains. And then his business partner, who does all the back end coding and whatnot, genius, the other Duncan, it's like B1 and B2, D1 and
D1 and D2.
He's in Romania. He moved from Canberra to Romania. So he's over there, but he works at night while we're sleeping, and it works well. And then Jane, who helps me with Facebook advertising and my SEO tweaks and things, she's in Newcastle, near Newcastle, and I'm in Brisbane. So I think it's just about understanding what you're not good at, and finding people who complement you, that fill those gaps. And I think if your communication is good, that you don't need to necessarily be with them side by side the whole time physically. So my team is virtual. And then, bookkeeping is done virtually as well.
Yeah.
So now with Cloudware, it's just possible to run your business from all sorts of places, really, in all sorts of ways.
That's really exciting, isn't it? That opportunity. I mean, when I started back in 2003, I literally had a laptop and a business card. That was it. They were my startup costs. And the difference that we've got, the opportunities that we have now in terms of being able to reach audiences and get message across to markets that we never could have dreamed of in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, prior to that, I worked in advertising and media. And if you wanted to get your message out, you had to buy a full-page ad in the paper. Yeah. Beyond the means of most of us, or a classified ad. Yeah. They were our options, or letterbox drops. And so everything has changed so much. You're absolutely right. A virtual team is just so possible and brilliant. And what about the flip side of that? What about what goes on up here in the mindset? Because I know my experience has been that isolation can be a bit of a dream killer. And it can certainly be when self-doubt comes sort of, coming in around from the edges. So how have you kept yourself buoyant in that respect as you've been a businesswoman?
That's a good question. And I think it probably goes back to my blissfully unaware comment earlier. I don't mind my own time. I'm an introvert by nature. So I think it kind of suited me personally. I'm reasonably disciplined. And so if I want to do something, I'll just hunker down and do it, mostly. But I've also had the view, and maybe the privileged perspective, is that my family and my lifestyle take first priority. So and my business has to respond to their needs. And it doesn't mean that the business doesn't come first. Sometimes it does, but it's kind of, so I think I've been able to keep going knowing that that's my priority.
Yeah.
Family's interwoven in all of that. My biggest downfall is that I didn't reach out often enough to others. I think there is power in that, especially when you find a tribe that gets you and you get them. And that's what I've come to realize. I was doing it virtually, but not, physically face to face. And I think I could have done that better and probably reaped more rewards from that had I done that earlier in my business life. Because now doing what I do with her business, for example, has really opened a lot of doors, brought me to you, for example. So it's, I think that is important to do when you run your own business from home, just to reach out a little bit.
I totally agree. And I love how you're very clear on the role that your business plays in your life. That's a question that I really ask people to ponder, because it will have an enormous influence on the decisions that you make around your business. And it can also take away a lot of the guilt and the doubt that's there as well. So your business role can be anything from, this is full-time, full-on, the most important thing at the center of my life, to it's a project, it's a passion project, and I give it the time when I've got the time available, and all variations in between. I think it's most important for us as women to be able to, and for men as well, but we're talking women here, for us to be able to make that call to have a business that, if we choose, complements rather than commands our life. Because that, one of the things that I started doing very early on after getting some great advice, joining a tribe, was to set myself a stop time each day. Because my office is in my home, and it's all too easy to walk past and just pop back in there again. And I don't do this perfectly, but I've improved a lot to actually say, this is my finish time, this is my start time, this is my finish time, just like a normal business. And I'm having a lunch break, I'm going upstairs and I'm actually going to make a good lunch and have a break, as opposed to working through, because we can so often be very, very busy, but not necessarily be busy on the right things. We're just making ourselves jump through hoop after hoop. So I love the way that you've got that clarity on the role that the business plays in your life. And I really encourage anyone who's listening to check in with themselves in that same way. What role does this business play? So it makes it a lot easier for you to set your goals and to take the actions that work with that sort of view in mind. But yes, the tribe, so important. We can just disappear into the catacombs of doubt and despair, and even just don't even work out the right tools to use. It can be as simple as that. But when you're part of a tribe and you can ask those questions, it changes everything. It's the reason why I run masterminds, because having that small group of women who are working together and supporting each other and sharing their triumphs and challenges, and it's just such a wonderful atmosphere to thrive within. So I'm with you all the way when it comes to tribes, for sure.
Yeah, it's great.
So what do you see now? Sorry, Madonna, I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's important that we define success for ourselves. And not look to what others seemingly, and I underline, bold, italic, seemingly have as success. Because I believe that something's got to give. We all only have 24 hours in a day, and our own personal circumstances are unique to us. So whilst you might see out there in social media land, 6-figure incomes, kill it in 6 weeks, climb this, climb that, do that, and you'll get instant success. Look, it's just not, well, it might be for some, but in my experience, it just doesn't work that way. And really, my business is really small. And I say it's deliberately small, because if I tried to make it, I honestly believe if I tried to make it much, much bigger than what it was with my lifestyle, moving and the kids young and my husband deployed and all of that, there would have been too much stress in my world, and I wasn't prepared to live with that level of stress, So I think it's important to understand that your context is unique and do what is right for you and define success for you.
I think that is a brilliant way to be drawing this first conversation to a close, because I could not agree more that being able to define it and recognize that life moves in stages. Like when my children were smaller, life looked very different. The way that I approach business looked very different. With the kids now, one off at university and one in year 11, I'm still keeping my business intimate. That's the business model that I have, an intimate business model, until my daughter finishes HSC, which is, if for anyone listening from overseas, it's the big, hairy, audacious exams at the end of year 12, last year of school, because she needs my support. And then I will change gears again. I'll have a look at my life, I'll have a look at my goals, how I'm feeling about everything, and I may change gears again. And that, to me, denotes a next chapter. So my next chapter is only 18 months away. And for anyone listening, their next chapter could look different as well. It depends on what stage of life we're at. But I think the beauty is, this is the thing I love about getting older and wiser, I'll claim that, is that we recognize this and we can make these decisions that serve us just as much as they serve our clients. I think that's really important, because we don't want to resent our business and we don't want to put too much pressure on it to be all things to us. So I think you have one of the healthiest attitudes I've come across, I swear, when it comes to business building, my darling.
Oh, yay me. Well, and I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it, as well. So
that helps.
That helps, yeah.
That helps for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again so much for sharing these insights of what it's been like to move through your own journey and being really open and honest about what that entails. And very inspiring with the concept of the movement that you are creating and tying it into your business, because the two feed off each other so beautifully. They support each other so well. I think you've done a wonderful job. So imagine again that woman who's sitting here listening going, well, if she's done it, maybe I can do it too. Maybe it's time for me to move in a new direction, or maybe it's time for me to change gears. What words of encouragement would you leave that listener with, Anita?
I think give it some thought, focus on why, and then don't overthink it too much. Don't overthink it. Lead with your heart with something like that, a bit more than your head.
That sounds like very sage advice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And my lovely listener, I hope that this conversation has given you that feeling of elation and inspiration as well, that it is that we dream within our hearts, we can turn that into a business that serves us, that complements, that allows us to define success on our own terms and to build that business around it, being ready to shift gears when opportunities or when life changes, but coming back to that central concept that it needs to start with something that you feel passionate about, a change that you want to make in the world, be it on a big or on a small scale. And both of us thoroughly encourage you to take that action. Now, I'll pop the details of how to visit Anita's website in the show notes of today's episode. And I really encourage you to go and have a look, and especially at the connection statement and the imagery that she utilizes that really harnesses empathy and delight. Two pieces that I think are really important to be at the core of any business. And I'll put the photo on the show notes as well, so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So thank you so much for spending your time here today on the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela Raspis. Until next time, take care, and I'll talk to you very soon.